In a world where power meant everything and tenderness meant nothing, Kang Ji-hun had built walls so high that even sunlight couldn't penetrate them. The Korean Mafia CEO had a reputation that made grown men tremble and business rivals flee. But on a rain-soaked Tuesday in Chicago, a young black woman from rural Georgia did something no one had ever dared. She looked him straight in the eyes, stood on her tiptoes in a crowded elevator, and kissed him to escape a dangerous situation. What she didn't know was that this single act of desperate courage would make the city's most feared man completely obsessed with protecting her, spoiling her, and breaking every rule he'd ever made about keeping his heart locked away. If you love intense mafia romance with forbidden love, strong heroines who don't back down, and powerful men who fall hard, then you're in the right place. Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment telling me if you're team, protect her at all costs, or team, she can protect herself. Now, let's dive into Zora and Ji-hun's explosive love story. Zora Mae Bennett had exactly $47 in her bank account, a broken hearing aid that whistled when the wind blew wrong, and a full scholarship to the Chicago Institute of Performing Arts that had pulled her out of rural Georgia and dropped her into a world that looked at her like she'd landed from another planet. The scholarship letter had arrived 6 months ago, right around the time Mama had gotten sick and the medical bills started piling up like autumn leaves. Zora had almost turned it down. How could she leave when Mama needed her? But Mama had other plans. "Baby girl," she'd said, her voice weak but fierce, "I didn't raise you in that small town just to watch you stay small. You got a gift. Now go use it before life decides to take it from you too." So Zora had packed her one good suitcase, kissed Mama's forehead, promised her cousin Deshawn she'd call every Sunday, and boarded a Greyhound bus to Chicago with dreams bigger than her budget and hope more stubborn than common sense. The city had welcomed her with cold rain, colder stairs, and an apartment in Bridgeport that was technically close to campus but practically in another dimension of expensive. Her roommate's situation had fallen through 2 days before move-in, leaving Zora scrambling to find affordable housing in one of America's most expensive cities. That's how she ended up at the Lotus Tower, a gleaming high-rise in River North that was absolutely, completely, ridiculously out of her price range. But the listing she'd found online had seemed too good to be true, a studio apartment for $800 a month in a building where studios usually went for $3,000. Too good to be true usually meant exactly that, but desperation made optimists of even the most practical people. Zora stood in the Lotus Tower's marble lobby, her worn duffel bag looking particularly shabby against the polished floors, and tried not to feel like an imposter. The doorman had already given her 3 suspicious looks, and the receptionist's smile had frozen when Zora mentioned she was there about an apartment. "I'm sorry, but there must be some mistake," the receptionist said, her voice dripping with polite dismissal. "We don't have any units available at that price point." But the listing, Zora pulled out her phone, fingers clumsy as she searched for the email. Her hearing aid chose that moment to let out a sharp whistle of feedback, and she saw several people in the lobby turn to stare. Heat crept up her neck. She adjusted the device quickly, a practiced motion she'd done 1,000 times but one that always made her feel exposed. "Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," the receptionist said, her politeness evaporating. "This is a private building, and we can't have." "Can't have what?" Zora's voice came out sharper than she intended. "Can't have black girls from Georgia in your precious lobby? Can't have people who actually need affordable housing instead of treating apartments like investment properties?" The receptionist's face flushed. "That's not what It's exactly what you meant." Zora hoisted her bag higher on her shoulder. She'd dealt with this kind of coded language her whole life. Back in Georgia, it came wrapped in sweet tea and backhanded compliments, but the poison tasted the same. She turned to leave, blinking back tears of frustration, when the elevator doors opened. And her entire world tilted on its axis. The man who stepped out looked like he'd been carved from marble and dressed by the devil himself. Tall, lean but powerfully built, with sharp cheekbones and eyes so dark they looked black. His suit probably cost more than Zora's entire year's tuition, and he moved with the kind of dangerous grace that set off warning bells in the primitive part of her brain that still remembered when humans had to worry about predators. But what stopped Zora's breath wasn't his looks, it was the way the entire lobby seemed to freeze when he appeared. The receptionist went pale. The doorman straightened like he'd been electrocuted. Even the other residents in the lobby found sudden reasons to look elsewhere. This, Zora realized, was a man people feared. Kang Ji-hun, though most people in Chicago's underworld simply called him Gene or, more often, didn't call him anything at all because they were too smart to draw his attention, had been having a spectacularly bad day. His father's legitimate business facade was crumbling, the Irish mob was making moves on the south side, and his cousin had just informed him that someone had been skimming from their operations. He'd spent the morning in meetings that would have made civilians faint and the afternoon cleaning up messes that required the kind of solutions that kept lawyers awake at night. All he wanted was to go up to his penthouse, pour a drink older than most college students, and enjoy an hour of silence before the next crisis erupted. What he didn't expect was to walk into his lobby and find a young black woman with fire in her eyes telling off his receptionist. What he definitely didn't expect was for that same woman to look at him with absolutely no fear whatsoever. Their eyes met across the lobby, and Ji-hun felt something shift in his chest, a sensation so unfamiliar he almost mistook it for a heart attack. She was beautiful, but not in the polished, plastic way of the women who usually threw themselves at him. Her beauty was raw and real, natural curls pulled back in a ponytail, minimal makeup, a spray of freckles across her nose, and eyes the color of warm honey that looked at him like he was just a man, not a monster. That should have been his first warning. Zora watched the man in the expensive suit approach, and something in his expression made her brave or stupid. She'd never quite learned the difference. "Excuse me," she said, stepping toward him. "Do you know who I could talk to about an apartment listing? Because I'm getting the runaround here, and I'm too tired and too broke to deal with discrimination wrapped up in corporate speak." Ji-hun's eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch, for him, that was equivalent to someone else's jaw hitting the floor. No one approached him unbidden. No one made demands. And no one, absolutely no one, looked at him with that mixture of exhaustion and determination and expected him to help. "Mr. Kong." The receptionist rushed over, her voice panicked. "I'm so sorry, sir, this person was just leaving." "Was I?" Zora crossed her arms. "Because I haven't gotten any answers yet." Ji-hun studied her. He noticed the worn duffel bag, the slightly too thin jacket for Chicago weather, the hearing aid she kept trying to discreetly adjust. He noticed the pride in her posture despite clearly being outmatched and out-resourced. He noticed that when she met his eyes, she didn't flinch. He should have walked away. He had 1,000 things to do, and getting involved with a stranger's housing problems wasn't on the list. Instead, he heard himself say, "What apartment listing?" Zora blinked, surprised he'd engaged. She pulled up the email on her cracked phone screen and showed it to him. Ji-hun recognized the apartment number immediately, 8C, a studio he'd bought 3 years ago as part of a bulk real estate investment. He'd forgotten he even owned it, which said something about the scale of his assets and the quality of his property managers. Or maybe the listing was bait for something else. His mind immediately went to surveillance, infiltration, a setup by rivals who wanted someone inside his building. But when he looked at this woman, really looked at her, he saw no deception. Just desperate hope trying hard to look like confidence. "That apartment is available," he said, and the receptionist made a strangled sound. "Margaret, process the lease agreement." "Standard terms." "But sir," Margaret started. Ji-hun's gaze cut to her, and whatever she saw there made her swallow her objections. "Thank you," Zora said, and her smile was like sunrise, warm and genuine and completely unguarded. "I'm Zora, by the way. Zora Bennett." She held out her hand. Ji-hun stared at it like she'd offered him a live grenade. People didn't touch him casually. People didn't smile at him like that. People didn't. He shook her hand. Her palm was calloused, her grip firm. She had the hands of someone who worked, who created, who built things rather than destroyed them. "Kang Ji-hun," he said. "But you can call me Jean." "Well, thank you, Jean. You just saved my entire future." Zora's smile widened, and Ji-hun felt that strange shift in his chest again. "I promise I'll be the best tenant you've ever had. Quiet, respectful, no parties. I'm here for school anyway, so I'll probably just be dancing and studying and trying not to starve like a proper broke college student." Dancing. That explained the calluses, the way she held herself with unconscious grace. "What are you studying?" The question came out before Ji-hun could stop it. He didn't make small talk. He made business decisions and power plays and occasionally made people disappear, but he didn't chat with strangers in lobbies. Dance, with a minor in arts administration, Zora said, her whole face lighting up. I got a full ride to the Chicago Institute of Performing Arts. It's literally a dream come true. I'm from this tiny town in Georgia where the biggest entertainment is Friday night football and the Dairy Queen, so this, she gestured at the lobby, the city beyond the windows, this is everything. Something twisted in Jihan's chest. Innocence. Hope. Dreams. All things his world devoured like a black hole swallowing light. He should have walked away then. Should have let Margaret finish the paperwork and never thought about Zora Bennett again. Instead, he said, welcome to Chicago, Miss Bennett. I hope it lives up to your dreams. Then he did walk away, because Jihan had learned long ago that he destroyed beautiful things simply by standing too close to them. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that in 3 days, Zora Bennett would save his life. And in saving him, she would doom them both to a love story that would shake Chicago's underworld to its foundations. The kiss that changed everything. Zora's first 3 days in Chicago were a blur of orientation sessions, dance classes that made her muscles scream, and the strange adjustment to living alone in a city where she didn't know a single soul. The apartment was small but clean, with a view of the alley behind the building that was decidedly unglamorous. But it was hers, and after growing up sharing a bedroom with 2 cousins in Mama's tiny house, having her own space felt like luxury. She'd seen Gene exactly once since move-in day, a brief glimpse of him getting into a black car with tinted windows, surrounded by men in suits who moved like soldiers. Zora had waved, but he'd either not seen her or chosen not to respond. Probably for the best. He clearly ran in circles so far above her tax bracket they might as well be different species. On her 4th day in Chicago, everything changed. Zora had stayed late at the practice studio, working on a contemporary piece for her first showcase. By the time she left campus, it was past 10 p.m., and the autumn night had turned cold enough to make her wish she'd brought a heavier jacket. The Red Line train was half empty, filled with the usual mix of night shift workers, late students, and people who looked like they were running from something or towards something with equal desperation. Zora put in her earbuds, set to low volume so she could still hear warning sounds with her hearing aid, and tried not to think about how much her feet hurt. She got off at Chicago Avenue and started the 3-block walk to Lotus Tower. The streets were well lit but quiet, that strange urban silence that felt heavy with potential energy. Zora was half a block from the building when she noticed the man following her. At first, she thought it was paranoia. Mama had always warned her about city dangers, and Zora's imagination could be overly creative. But when she paused to pretend to check her phone and he stopped too, maintaining the same distance, her heartbeat kicked up. She walked faster. He matched her pace. 2 blocks from safety. Her hand fumbled for her phone, trying to remember if you called 911 or just dialed without unlocking. Her hearing aid picked up his footsteps speeding up, and pure instinct made her run. She burst through the Lotus Tower doors like she was being chased by hellfire, and crashed directly into a group of men in the lobby. Expensive suits. Cold eyes. And in the center of them all, Gene. He looked different than he had 3 days ago. Harder. More dangerous. His jaw was tight, and there was something in his expression that made Zora's flight instinct scream even louder than it had outside. But behind him, through the glass doors, she could see her pursuer approaching the building. Zora did the only thing her panicked brain could think of. She grabbed the front of Jin's suit jacket, pulled herself up on her tiptoes, and kissed him. For exactly 3 seconds, the world stopped spinning. Jihan had been in the middle of a very delicate negotiation with the Antonelli family, the kind of negotiation where one wrong word could start a war, when Zora Bennett appeared like a hurricane and pressed her lips to his. His first instinct was to push her away. His second was to protect her, because even in his shock, he'd clocked the man who'd followed her in, and Jihan recognized a predator when he saw one. His third instinct, the one that concerned him most, was to kiss her back. She tasted like cherry lip balm and desperation, and when she pulled away, her honey-colored eyes were wide with fear and something that might have been apology. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, loud enough only for him to hear. "Someone followed me, and I panicked, and you were here, and I thought." She didn't get to finish. The man who'd followed her pushed through the doors, and Jihan recognized him immediately, Marco Antonelli's nephew, Carlo, who had a reputation for exactly the kind of behavior that had put fear in Zora's eyes. The temperature in the lobby dropped 10 degrees. Carlo, Jihan said, his voice flat and cold as a frozen lake. He didn't step away from Zora. If anything, he shifted slightly, putting himself between her and the other man. Is there a problem? Carlo's eyes darted between Jihan and Zora, and something flickered across his face, frustration, calculation, then fear as he realized whose woman he'd been pursuing. Except she wasn't Jihan's woman. They'd met once. This kiss was fake, a desperate ploy for safety. But Carlo didn't know that. And neither did the Antonelli representatives who'd gone very, very still. No problem, Mr. Kong, Carlo said, taking a step back. I didn't realize the lady was with you. Now you do. Jihan's hand settled on the small of Zora's back, a gesture of possession that made her stiffen slightly. I trust this won't happen again. It wasn't a question. It was a command backed by the full weight of the Kong family's reputation and reach. Carlo nodded rapidly and practically fled the lobby. The moment he was gone, Zora tried to step away, but Jihan's hand stayed firm. Not yet, he murmured. The Antonellis are still watching. Indeed, Marco Antonelli himself was studying them with dark, assessing eyes. Jihan had been negotiating territorial boundaries before Zora's dramatic entrance, and now the entire dynamic had shifted. Gentlemen, Jihan said smoothly, I apologize for the interruption. My girlfriend just arrived. We'll need to continue this discussion tomorrow. Girlfriend. The word landed like a bomb in the quiet lobby. Marco Antonelli's weathered face creased into something that might have been a smile. I didn't know you had a woman, Kong. You've been holding out on us. I keep my personal life private. Jihan's tone made it clear that was the end of that discussion. The Antonellis took the hint and left, but not before Marco gave Zora a long, evaluating look that made her skin crawl. The second the lobby was clear, Zora stepped away from Jean like he'd burned her. I am so sorry, she said, words tumbling over each other. That was completely inappropriate, and I swear I'm not some crazy stalker. That guy followed me from the train, and I got scared, and you were there, and I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry. Please don't evict me. Jihan stared at her. She just complicated his life in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. The Antonellis would spread word that Kong Jihan had a girlfriend, which would make Zora a target for anyone who wanted leverage against him. He should be furious. He should definitely be evicting her. Instead, he found himself asking, Are you hurt? Zora blinked. What? Did Carlo touch you before you got here? No, I noticed him following me and ran. I'm fine. Just scared. She hugged herself, and Jihan noticed she was shivering. From cold or adrenaline, he wasn't sure. He shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders before he could think better of it. Mr. Kong. Jean, he corrected. Jean, Zora said softly, pulling his jacket tighter around herself. It swallowed her frame, and something about seeing her wrapped in his clothing made Jihan's chest feel tight again. Thank you for not throwing me out on the street. I promise I'll stay out of your way from now on. You can't. What? Jihan ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. The Antonellis now think you're my girlfriend. If you suddenly disappear or I'm seen treating you like a stranger, they'll know it was an act. Which means they'll know you're unprotected. Which means Carlo or someone like him might try again. Horror dawned on Zora's face. Oh my God. I've made everything worse. Not worse. Complicated. Jihan's mind was already racing through scenarios and solutions. We need to maintain the appearance of a relationship until I can restructure the Antonelli agreement and ensure your safety. You mean, fake date you? Zora's voice came out strangled. Unless you have a better solution. She clearly didn't, because she just stood there, drowning in his jacket, looking like her world had turned upside down. Which, to be fair, it had. How long? She finally asked. A few weeks. Maybe a month. And what does that involve? Being seen together occasionally. Maybe attending an event or two. Nothing inappropriate, Ji-hun added, seeing her expression. This is for your protection. Zora worried her bottom lip, thinking. What do you get out of it? Smart question. Ji-hun considered lying, but something about those honey-colored eyes made him want to be honest. The Antonellis respect family. They'll be more willing to negotiate fairly if they think I have someone to protect. And... He hesitated, then admitted, my father has been pressuring me to settle down. This might get him off my back for a while. So we both benefit from the lie. Yes. Zora was quiet for a long moment, and Ji-hun found himself holding his breath, waiting for her decision. Which was absurd. He could order her to cooperate. He could make her life very difficult if she refused. But he wanted her to choose. Okay, she finally said. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Of course she did. Ji-hun bit back something that might have been a smile. Name them. First, this is strictly business. No real feelings, no actual intimacy beyond what we need to sell it publicly. Agreed. Second, I still have school and dance. I can't be at your beck and call 24/7. I have a business empire to run. I think we can manage our schedules. Third, Zora met his eyes, and her voice turned firm. When this is over, you help me make sure I'm actually safe. Not just a temporary fix. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Ji-hun felt a flicker of respect. She was scared but negotiating from strength anyway. Admirable. Done, he said. Anything else? Yeah. Zora's expression softened slightly. What's actually going on here, Jean? Who are you, really? Because that lobby scene wasn't normal landlord behavior. Ji-hun could have lied. Probably should have. But if Zora was going to be tangled up in his world, even temporarily, she deserved to know what she was walking into. My family is involved in import-export businesses, he said carefully. Some legitimate, some less so. We have rivals, competitors, and complicated relationships with other families. The Antonellis are one of those families. You're in the Mafia. It wasn't a question. That's a crude term. But accurate? Accurate enough. Zora should have run. Should have broken the lease, gotten on the next Greyhound back to Georgia, and never looked back. Instead, she squared her shoulders and said, then I guess we better make this fake relationship really convincing, because if we don't, I'm guessing the consequences are worse than awkward. Much worse. Great. Awesome. I came to Chicago to dance, and now I'm fake dating a mobster. Zora laughed, a slightly hysterical edge to it. Mama always said I had terrible taste in men. We're not actually dating, Ji-hun reminded her. Right. Of course. Zora's smile was strained. So, do I get a tutorial on how to be a Mafia girlfriend, or? Despite everything, the complications, the danger, the absolute insanity of this situation, Ji-hun felt his lips twitch. I'll send someone to brief you tomorrow. For now, get some rest. And Zora? She paused at the elevator, looking back at him. Keep your phone on. If anything feels wrong, you call me immediately. He handed her a business card with a number handwritten on the back. That's my private line. Don't hesitate to use it. Zora took the card, her fingers brushing his for a moment. Thank you. For tonight. For not letting Carlo, she swallowed hard. Thank you. Then she was gone, the elevator doors closing on her still wearing his jacket. Ji-hun stood in the lobby long after she'd disappeared, his world fundamentally altered by one impulsive kiss from a girl who didn't belong in his darkness but had somehow stumbled into it anyway. His head of security, Yoon Tae-young, emerged from the shadows. Boss, this is a disaster. I'm aware. She's a civilian. An outsider. She'll be a target for anyone who wants to hurt you. I know. So why are we protecting her instead of paying her off and relocating her? Ji-hun was quiet for a moment, then said, because she looked at me like I was human, Tae. When was the last time that happened? Tae had no answer for that. Okay, can we talk about how Zora just accidentally fake engaged herself to a mafia boss? And Jean is already going soft for her. Did you catch that jacket moment? I'm dying. Drop a comment telling me, would you fake date a dangerous man to stay safe, or would you be on the first bus back to Georgia? And if you're loving this story, share it with your romance-loving friends. Now let's see how this fake relationship gets very real, very fast. Zora woke up the next morning convinced she'd dreamed the entire thing. Then she saw Jin's suit jacket draped over her desk chair, smelling like expensive cologne and danger, and reality crashed back. She'd kissed a mobster. Agreed to fake date said mobster. Was now apparently under his protection, which sounded romantic in theory but terrifying in practice. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk a car will pick you up at 10 a.m. We're something nice but comfortable. Yoon Taeyong, head of security for Mr. Kong asterisk. Zora stared at the message. It was 8:30 a.m. She had a dance class at noon that she absolutely couldn't miss. She texted back, asterisk I have class at noon. Can we make this quick, asterisk? The response was immediate, asterisk noted. The car will have you back in time, asterisk. At exactly 10 a.m., Zora's apartment buzzer rang. She'd changed outfits 4 times before settling on black jeans, a cream sweater, and her nicest ankle boots, the ones without scuffs. She'd left her hair natural, curls framing her face, and kept her makeup simple. The car waiting for her was a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. A man in his 30s with sharp eyes and a sharper suit stood by the open door. Miss Bennett, I'm Yoon Taeyong. Please, get in. Zora slid into the back seat, and Taeyong joined her while another man drove. Where are we going? She asked. Shopping first, then a briefing. Shopping? Taeyong's expression was professionally neutral. You'll be appearing at events with Mr. Kong. You'll need appropriate attire. Zora bristled. What's wrong with my clothes? Nothing, for a student. But Mr. Kong moves in circles where appearance matters. This isn't a judgment, Miss Bennett. It's simply reality. He wasn't wrong, but it still stung. Zora crossed her arms. I can't afford designer clothes. Mr. Kong is covering expenses. I don't want his money. Then consider it part of your compensation for a role you didn't audition for but are being asked to play. That was actually a fair point. The car pulled up to a boutique on Oak Street that didn't even have prices in the window, never a good sign for Zora's anxiety. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of personal shoppers, tailors, and more clothing than Zora had owned in her entire life. Cocktail dresses, evening gowns, casual but expensive outfits, shoes, accessories. This is too much, Zora protested as a saleswoman brought out a 5th dress. Mr. Kong was very specific about making sure you had options, Taeyong said. He'd been sitting in a corner, scrolling through his phone, apparently unbothered by the fashion parade. Does he always throw money at problems? Usually, he throws other things. Money is much less messy. Zora couldn't tell if that was a joke. By the time they finished, Zora was exhausted and wearing a new outfit, a silk emerald blouse and tailored black slacks that fit like they'd been made for her. Because they had been. Now the briefing, Taeyong said, leading her to a private room in the back of the boutique. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steel gray hair was waiting. She introduced herself as Helen Park, etiquette consultant and family friend. Basically, I'm here to teach you how to survive in Jihan's world without getting eaten alive, Helen said bluntly. So let's start with the basics. What do you know about Korean culture? I like K-dramas. Zora offered weakly. Helen's smile was patient. We'll start from the beginning then. For the next hour, Zora's head spun with information. How to greet Jihan's associates, respectful but not subservient. Topics to avoid, family business specifics, anything that sounded like interrogation. How to handle inappropriate questions, deflect with grace. The significance of Jihan's position, more important than Zora had realized. The danger she was actually in, significantly more than she'd imagined. The Kang family isn't just wealthy, Helen explained. They're one of the most powerful Korean-American organizations in the Midwest. Jihan's grandfather built the empire, his father expanded it, and Jihan has been consolidating power since he took over 3 years ago. Took over how? Zora asked. Helen and Taeyang exchanged a look. His father stepped down due to health issues, Helen said carefully, which Zora suspected wasn't the whole truth. And the Antonellis? Italian family, based on the south side. Historically allied with the Kangs, but the relationship has been strained lately. Your situation with Marco's nephew could have escalated tensions. Instead, Jean claiming me as his girlfriend made it personal? Exactly. The families respect personal boundaries, usually. Carlo won't touch you now. But other people might? Taeyang nodded. The Kang family has enemies. If they think you matter to Jihan, they might try to use you against him. Zora's stomach twisted. So I'm basically bait. You're protected, Taeyang corrected. There's a difference. Is there? No one answered, which was answer enough. They got Zora back to campus with 10 minutes to spare before her dance class. As she rushed into the studio, her mind was still reeling. She thought this would be simple, play pretend for a few weeks, then go back to her normal life. But the more she learned about Jin's world, the more she realized, there might be no going back. 3 days later, Zora stood in front of her bathroom mirror, wearing a dress that cost more than her entire semester's textbooks, and tried to remember how to breathe. Tonight was her first public appearance as Kang Jihan's girlfriend, a charity gala at the Four Seasons that would be attended by Chicago's elite, both legitimate and otherwise. Helen had spent yesterday prepping her, how to walk in heels, how to make small talk, how to stand next to Jean without looking terrified. The dress was midnight blue, fitted at the waist and flowing to the floor, with a neckline that was elegant without being revealing. Someone named Marcus had done her hair and makeup, her curls were twisted into an updo that showed off her neck, and her makeup was flawless but still looked like her. She looked beautiful. She looked expensive. She looked like she belonged. It was the best costume she'd ever worn, and the most terrifying performance she'd ever have to give. The knock on her door came at exactly 7 p.m. Zora opened it to find Jean, and her breath caught. He wore a black tux that fit him like sin, his hair styled back, his expression unreadable. But his eyes went dark when they landed on her, and something flickered across his face too quickly to name. You look beautiful, he said quietly. You look terrifying, Zora replied, then winced. Sorry, that came out wrong. The corner of his mouth lifted, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen from him. Terrifying is what I'm going for. Beautiful is a bonus. He offered his arm, and Zora took it, trying to ignore how solid he felt, how safe despite knowing exactly how dangerous he was. In the elevator, Jean said, there are a few people you should know about tonight. He proceeded to give her a rundown of key players, business rivals, family allies, politicians on various payrolls, and a few names that made Taeyang, writing down with them, wince. And my father will be there, Jean added, his voice tightening almost imperceptibly. You don't get along? That's an understatement. Does he know about me? He will after tonight. The car ride to the Four Seasons was quiet, tension humming beneath the surface. Zora noticed that Taeyang sat in the front with the driver, and another car full of security followed them. Is all this really necessary? She asked. Yes, Jean and Taeyang said simultaneously. The gala was held in a ballroom that looked like something out of a fairy tale, crystal chandeliers, golden accents, and enough wealth concentrated in one room to fund a small country. Zora felt every eye turn to them when they entered. Jin's hand settled on her lower back, warm and steady. Just breathe, he murmured. You're doing fine. I haven't done anything yet. You walked in with me. That's enough to set tongues wagging. He was right. Zora could feel the stares, hear the whispers. She caught fragments as they walked. Didn't know Kang was seeing anyone. Who is she? Definitely not from our circles. Jin's hand pressed slightly firmer against her back, a silent message, ignore them. They made it halfway across the ballroom before a voice stopped them. Jihan. The man who'd spoken was older, maybe 60s, with graying hair and eyes that were eerily similar to Jin's. He wore his power like a second skin, and the people around him deferred with the kind of respect born from fear. "Father," Jin said, his voice empty of emotion. So this was Kang Daesung, the former head of the family. Daesung's gaze slid to Zora, assessing and cold. "And who is this?" "Zora Bennett, my girlfriend." Jin's introduction was smooth, giving nothing away. "Zora, this is my father, Kang Daesung." Zora remembered Helen's coaching, respectful but not weak. She offered a small bow, the way Helen had taught her. "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Kang." Daesung didn't return the greeting. "Bennett. That's not a Korean name." "No, sir. I'm from Georgia." "And what does your family do?" It was a test, Zora realized. A way to assess her worth through her connections. She lifted her chin. "My mother is a nurse. My family are farmers and teachers and people who work hard for what they have. Not wealthy, but good people." Silence stretched. Jean went very still beside her. Then Daesung laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You brought a farm girl to the Four Seasons, Jihan? How democratic of you." "Zora is my guest," Jean said, ice in his voice. "She'll be treated with respect." "Or what?" Daesung's smile was a knife's edge. "Or you'll remember that I run this family now, not you." Father and son stared at each other, and Zora felt like she was watching two apex predators size each other up. Finally, Daesung's gaze slid away. "Enjoy your evening." He walked off, and Zora released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "I'm sorry," Jean said quietly. "For what?" "My father is difficult." "He's an asshole," Zora corrected, then covered her mouth. "Sorry, that was accurate." Jin's expression softened slightly. "Come on. Let's get a drink before the next interrogation." The rest of the evening was a blur of introductions, careful conversations, and Zora doing her best impression of someone who belonged. Jean stayed close, his presence a constant shield, and Zora found herself relaxing incrementally. Until a woman in a red dress approached, beautiful and polished and looking at Jean like she owned him. "Jihan, darling," she purred, completely ignoring Zora. "I didn't know you'd be here. We should talk about the Riverside project." "Not tonight, Vivian," Jean said coolly. Vivian's gaze finally landed on Zora, dismissive and sharp. "And you are?" "Zora Bennett, Jihan's girlfriend." The words came easier now. "Girlfriend?" Vivian laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "How quaint. And temporary, I'm sure." "Vivian," Jin's voice dropped to a dangerous register. "Walk away." "You always did like your charity cases," Vivian said, but she left, her exit as dramatic as her entrance. "Ex?" Zora guessed. "Business rival with delusions," Jean corrected. "Are you alright? Do people always talk to you like this?" "Like what?" "Like they're trying to find your weak spots so they can stab you." Jean was quiet for a moment, then said, "Yes. Welcome to my world." "It's exhausting." "It is," he agreed. "Let's get some air." He led her out to a balcony overlooking the city, the Chicago skyline glittering in the darkness. The autumn air was crisp, and Zora shivered. Jean immediately shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders, just like that first night. "You keep giving me your jackets," Zora said. "You keep being cold." They stood in comfortable silence, looking out at the city, and Zora felt some of the evening's tension drain away. "You did well tonight," Jean said. "I know it wasn't easy. Your world is scary." "Yes. But you're scarier than most of them." Jean looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "Does that frighten you?" Zora considered the question honestly. "It should. But when I'm with you, I feel safe." Which is probably really stupid, considering. Considering I'm a monster? Considering you're dangerous. Zora turned to face him fully. "But I don't think you're a monster, Jean." Monsters don't give their jackets to cold girls or make sure they get to class on time or look at their fathers with that much hurt buried under the anger. Ji-hun went very still. You shouldn't try to see good in me, Zora. You'll be disappointed. Maybe. Or maybe you're so used to people expecting the worst that you forgot you could be anything else. Before Jean could respond, Taeyong appeared in the doorway. Boss, we have a situation. The softness that had crept into Jin's expression vanished, replaced by cold calculation. What kind? The Lee family. They're here, and they're asking questions about Miss Bennett. Jin's jaw tightened. We're leaving. Who are the Lees? Zora asked as Jean guided her back inside. Rivals. Dangerous ones. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. Stay close to me. They made it to the ballroom entrance when a man stepped into their path, young, handsome in a cruel way, with a smile that set off every alarm bell Zora had. Kang Ji-hun, the man said. Leaving so soon. And without introducing us to your lovely companion. Move, Lee Min-jun, Jean said flatly. So hostile. I just want to meet the woman who's caught Chicago's Ice King. Min-jun's gaze slid to Zora, and she felt violated just by the look. She's very pretty. Unusual choice for you. Jean moved slightly, blocking Zora from Min-jun's view. This is your only warning. Or what? You'll start a war over a girl? Min-jun laughed. She must be very special. The air felt electric, violence humming just beneath the surface. Then Zora did something either very brave or very stupid. She stepped around Jean and looked Min-jun dead in the eye. I'm special enough that Jean claims me in a room full of witnesses, she said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. Which means I'm under Kang family protection. Are you really stupid enough to test that? Min-jun's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across his face. Behind her, Zora felt Jin's surprise too, but he recovered instantly, his hand coming to rest possessively on her hip. The lady makes a good point, Jean said, his voice soft and deadly. And she's right, she is under my protection. Tell your father that if anyone from the Lee family approaches her, looks at her wrong, or even thinks her name too loudly, I'll consider it a declaration of war. Are we clear? Min-jun's smile had frozen. He nodded once, sharp and angry, then stepped aside. Jean guided Zora past him and out to their waiting car, Taeyong and security forming a protective circle around them. It wasn't until they were safely in the car, moving through Chicago's late-night traffic, that Jean spoke. That was incredibly reckless. I know. You could have made things worse. I know. But it worked. Zora looked at him, surprised. Jean was looking back at her with something that might have been admiration. You stood up to Lee Min-jun. Most grown men won't do that. I was terrified. You didn't show it. That's what mattered. Jin's hand was still holding hers, and he didn't let go. You continue to surprise me, Zora Bennett. Is that good or bad? I haven't decided yet. When they pulled up to Lotus Tower, Jean walked Zora to her apartment door despite Taeyong's subtle suggestion that they had early meetings. Thank you, Zora said, for tonight. For protecting me. You protected yourself. I was just backup. Zora smiled. We made a good team. We did. Jean hesitated, then said, there's another event next week. A family dinner. It will be worse than tonight. I'll be there. You don't have to. Yes, I do. We had a deal, remember? And besides. Zora touched his arm gently. You shouldn't have to face your father alone. Something cracked in Jin's carefully controlled expression. You really should stop trying to save me. Why? Because I'm not sure I deserve it. That's not for you to decide, Zora said softly. Then, before she could lose her nerve, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. Good night, Jean. She slipped into her apartment before she could see his reaction, her heart pounding. On the other side of the door, Kang Ji-hun stood frozen, his hand touching the cheek she'd kissed, and wondered how a farm girl from Georgia had managed to slip past every defense he'd spent a lifetime building. and why he wasn't more terrified by that fact. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a strange new routine. Zora attended classes and dance rehearsals during the day, then transformed into Jin's girlfriend in the evenings, gallery openings, business dinners, charity events. Each appearance cemented their relationship in the public eye, and each event taught Zora more about the dangerous, glittering world Jin inhabited. But something else was happening too, something neither of them had planned for. The fake relationship was starting to feel real. It was in the small moments. Jin texting her to make sure she'd eaten between classes. Zora saving him a seat at her dance showcase, and Jin actually showing up, sitting in the back row with Taeyong, watching her perform with an intensity that made her breathless. The way Jin's hand would find hers automatically now, fingers interlacing like they belonged together. How Zora had stopped flinching when he touched her, had started leaning into his warmth instead. The late-night conversations in the car after events, when Jin's walls would crack slightly and he'd tell her fragments of his story, the pressure of inheriting the family business at 25, the weight of choices he'd made, the loneliness of his position. And Zora sharing her own truths, her fear that she'd never be good enough, that one day everyone would realize she didn't belong in their prestigious program, that leaving Mama had been selfish. It wasn't selfish, Jin had said fiercely. It was brave. You chose your dream even when it hurt. That's not selfishness. That's strength. No one had ever called her brave before. The family dinner came faster than Zora was ready for. It's just dinner, Jin said as they pulled up to a mansion in Lincoln Park that made Lotus Tower look modest. A few hours, then it's done. Your father will be there. Unfortunately. Anyone else I should worry about? My uncle, my cousin Jaewon, a few family advisors. They'll all be judging you. Great. Super low pressure. Jin's hand squeezed hers. You face down Lee Minjun. You can handle my family. Zora wasn't so sure, but she smiled anyway. The mansion's interior was all dark wood and expensive art, beautiful and cold. A housekeeper led them to a formal dining room where several people were already seated. Daesung sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable when he saw them enter. Ji-hun. Miss Bennett. How punctual. Father. Jin pulled out Zora's chair before sitting beside her. A small gesture, but one that clearly said, she's mine to care for. The other family members introduced themselves, Uncle Kang Min-soo, who looked like a softer version of Daesung, cousin Jaewon, who gave Zora a sympathetic smile that suggested he knew exactly how uncomfortable she felt, and a few others whose names Zora immediately forgot. Dinner was a tense affair of perfectly prepared Korean dishes and carefully worded conversations that felt like verbal warfare. So, Miss Bennett, Daesung said as the main course was served, Ji-hun tells me you're a dancer. Yes, sir. Contemporary and modern, primarily. And what do you plan to do with that degree? Open a studio? It was said dismissively, like teaching was beneath consideration. Actually, I'm interested in arts administration, Zora said evenly. Using dance as community outreach, particularly in underserved areas. Art shouldn't be just for people who can afford it. How idealistic, Daesung said. And unrealistic. Art is a luxury, not a necessity. I disagree, Zora said, feeling Jin tense beside her but continuing anyway. Art is how communities tell their stories, process their trauma, celebrate their joy. Some of the most powerful art comes from places with the least resources. You would know, coming from rural Georgia. The table went silent. Yes, I would, Zora said, meeting his gaze. I grew up poor. My mama worked double shifts so I could take dance classes at the community center. I wore second-hand costumes and practiced in our living room because we couldn't afford a studio. And I got here anyway, because my mama taught me that where you come from doesn't determine where you're going. Only your determination and your character do that. Beautiful speech, Daesung said. But determination doesn't build empires. Power does. Which makes me wonder what you're really doing with my son. Father, that's enough, Jin said, ice in his voice. Is it? You bring home a girl from nowhere, claim she's your girlfriend, and expect us to just accept it? She has no family connections, no resources, nothing to offer. She offers me something you never did, Jean interrupted, his voice cutting. She sees me as a person, not a weapon or a disappointment or a tool to expand your legacy. The temperature in the room dropped to Arctic levels. Daesung's eyes went cold. Watch yourself, boy. I'm not a boy anymore. You made sure of that when you forced me to take over the family business at 25. And Zora is my choice, which means she's under family protection whether you like it or not. You're making a mistake. Then it's mine to make. Father and son stared at each other across the table, years of unspoken conflict crackling between them. Zora gently touched Jin's hand under the table, a silent message, I'm here. His fingers immediately interlaced with hers, holding tight. If you'll excuse us, Jin said, standing and pulling Zora up with him, we're leaving. Sit down, Ji-hun. No. Jin's voice was flat with finality. I came tonight as a courtesy, not an obligation. Zora deserves better than to be interrogated and insulted. We're done here. He guided Zora out of the dining room, Taeyong appearing from wherever he'd been stationed to follow them. They were halfway to the car when Jae-won caught up to them. Jin, wait. Jin turned, and Zora saw the family resemblance. Jae-won had the same sharp features, but his eyes were kinder. I'm sorry, Jae-won said, slightly breathless. Uncle Daesung was completely out of line. When isn't he? Fair point. Jae-won turned to Zora. Miss Bennett, it was genuinely nice to meet you. You're brave for standing up to him. Or stupid, Zora said. Sometimes those are the same thing. Jae-won smiled, then looked at Jin. She's good for you, cousin. Don't screw this up. It's not, Jin started, then stopped. Thank you, Jae-won. In the car, Zora expected Jin to be angry, but instead, he just looked exhausted. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I shouldn't have brought you into that. You warned me it would be bad. Not bad enough, apparently. Zora studied his profile in the passing streetlights. Jin, why does your father hate you so much? He doesn't hate me. He's disappointed in me. There's a difference. Why? Jin was quiet for so long Zora thought he wouldn't answer. Then. Because I'm not ruthless enough. Because I question orders instead of blindly following them. Because when I took over the family business, I started trying to move us toward legitimate operations, which he sees as weakness. He laughed bitterly. He built an empire on fear and violence, and he wanted an heir who would expand it the same way. Instead, he got me. You're not a disappointment, Zora said fiercely. You're a person trying to be better than what you were born into. That's not weakness. That's courage. Jin looked at her, something vulnerable in his eyes. You really believe that? Yes. Why? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you could have let Carlo follow me that night, but you didn't. I know you make sure I eat and get to class on time. I know you showed up to my showcase even though you had a dozen other things to do. I know you're trying to protect me even though it complicates your life. Zora reached for his hand. I know you're a good man pretending to be a bad one because that's what everyone expects. Zora, his voice cracked slightly. And I know this started fake, she continued, her heart pounding, but it doesn't feel fake anymore. Not to me. The car had stopped, they were back at Lotus Tower, but neither of them moved. It doesn't feel fake to me either, Jean admitted quietly. Which is a problem. Why? Because my world destroys good things. And you're the best thing that's happened to me in years. Zora's breath caught. Then don't let your world destroy this. Fight for it. Fight for us. There is no us. This was supposed to be temporary. Plans change. Zora cupped his face gently, making him look at her. Jean, I'm not asking for forever. I'm not asking you to change your whole life. I'm just asking, what if we stop pretending this is fake and admitted that somewhere along the way, it became real? If this is real, Jean said, his voice raw, then you're in real danger. My enemies will use you against me. My father will try to destroy you. You'll be giving up any chance at a normal life. Normal is overrated. Zora smiled softly. And I'd rather have complicated and real with you than safe and fake with anyone else. You're insane. Probably. Georgia girls are like that. Jean stared at her for a long moment, and Zora watched him war with himself, duty versus desire, protection versus possession, fear versus hope. Then he made his choice. He kissed her. Not the desperate, panicked kiss from their first meeting, but something slow and deep and achingly tender. His hands cradled her face like she was precious, breakable, worth protecting. Zora melted into him, fingers tangling in his hair, pouring 3 weeks of growing feelings into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jean rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he murmured. Probably the worst. My life is dangerous and complicated. I know. I can't promise you normal or safe. I don't want normal or safe. I want real. I want you. Jean pulled back slightly, searching her face. If we do this, if this becomes real, I need you to understand what that means. It means you're mine, and I protect what's mine with everything I have. It means I'll be possessive and probably overbearing. It means your life will change in ways you can't predict. And what do I get in return? Me. All of me. My loyalty, my protection, my heart, whatever's left of it that's worth having. Zora smiled, her heart so full it hurt. That's all I want. You're sure? Kiss me again and find out. So he did. News of their relationship, the real one, spread through Jin's world like wildfire. Kang Ji-hun, Chicago's Ice King, the CEO who showed no weakness, had finally fallen for someone. And not just anyone, but a civilian. An outsider. A black girl from rural Georgia who'd somehow slipped past every defense he'd built. Some saw it as a weakness to exploit. Others saw it as proof that even the coldest hearts could thaw. The Lee family saw it as an opportunity. It started small, Zora noticing the same car following her to campus, strange clicks on her phone line, the feeling of being watched. She told Jean immediately, and security tripled overnight. I don't want you going anywhere alone, Jean said, his jaw tight with worry. Taeyang will assign you a personal guard. Jean, I can't have a bodyguard following me to dance class. You can and you will. His tone left no room for argument. The Lees are moving. I don't know their play yet, but I won't risk you. This is because we made it real, isn't it? Jin's expression was tortured. Yes. Then we deal with it together, Zora said firmly. I chose this, remember? I chose you. I'm not running just because it gets hard. Zora. No. You don't get to make this decision for me. She stepped closer, looking up at him. I love you, Kang Ji-hun. I know it's fast, and I know it's crazy, but it's true. And I'm not going anywhere. Jean closed his eyes like her words physically hurt. I love you too. That's why I'm terrified. Then be terrified with me. But don't shut me out. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. If anything happens to you. It won't. You won't let it. But 3 days later, something did happen. Zora was leaving a late rehearsal, her bodyguard walking her to the car, when 3 vehicles surrounded them. Men poured out, too many to fight, too coordinated to be random. Her bodyguard shoved her behind him, reaching for his weapon, but someone hit him from behind before he could draw it. Zora ran. She made it half a block before someone grabbed her, a hand clamping over her mouth to muffle her scream. Her hearing aid fell out in the struggle, the world going muffled and distant. They dragged her to a van, zip-tied her wrists, threw a hood over her head. The last thing she heard clearly was someone saying, "Boss says keep her alive. She's our leverage." Then darkness and fear and the desperate hope that Jean would find her. Jean was in a meeting when Taeyang burst in, his face pale. They took her. The Lees took Zora. The room went silent as ice spread through Jin's veins, cold and deadly. When? 20 minutes ago. We found her bodyguard, he's alive but unconscious. No witnesses, no demands yet. Assemble everyone, Jean said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Call in every favor we have. I want the Lees found within the hour. Boss, if we move too aggressively. I don't care about politics or diplomacy or peace treaties, Jean interrupted, standing. They took what's mine. There are consequences for that. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Jean answered. Speak. Kang Ji-hun. Lee Sang-woo's voice, the Lee family patriarch. I believe we have something of yours. If you've hurt her. She's unharmed. For now. But that status depends entirely on you. What do you want? Your territory on the south side. Your shipping routes through the port. And your public acknowledgement that the Lee family is your equal. Jin's mind raced, calculating costs and consequences. The south side territory alone was worth millions annually. The shipping routes were the backbone of his legitimate business operations. But Zora. You have 24 hours, Sang-woo continued. After that, Miss Bennett's safety becomes negotiable. The line went dead. Taeyang was watching him. Boss? We're not negotiating, Jean said coldly. We're going to war. Zora didn't know how long she'd been in the dark, cold room. Hours? Days? Time had lost meaning without her hearing aid, the world reduced to muffled sounds and her own racing thoughts. They hadn't hurt her yet, just locked her in what felt like a basement, hands still zip-tied, the hood finally removed but replaced with darkness so complete she couldn't see her own hands. She tried not to panic. Tried to remember that Jean would come for her. But a small, terrified part of her whispered, what if he doesn't? What if the price is too high? What if you're not worth a war? The door opened, light spilling in and blinding her. A figure approached, Lee Min-jun, the man from the gala. He was saying something, his lips moving, but without her hearing aid, Zora could only catch fragments. Message to Kang, choices to make, smart, you'll convince him. I can't hear you, Zora said, hating how her voice shook. You made me lose my hearing aid. Min-jun's expression flickered, was that guilt? But it was gone in a moment, replaced by cold calculation. He pulled out a phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. Tell Kang to accept our terms. Or this gets much worse for you. Zora read it, then looked Min-jun dead in the eye and shook her head. No. Min-jun's face darkened. He typed again. You're willing to suffer for him? Zora took the phone and typed back. Asterisk I'm willing to trust that he'll come for me. And when he does, you'll regret this asterisk. Min-jun stared at her, then laughed. She could see it in the movement of his shoulders, even if she couldn't hear it. He pocketed his phone and left, the door slamming shut behind him, plunging Zora back into darkness. And she waited. Jean found them 16 hours later. His network of informants, surveillance, and sheer ruthless determination tracked Zora to a warehouse on the far south side, Lee territory, heavily guarded. It's a trap, Taeyang warned. They're expecting you to come for her. I know. Boss, if we go in there. Then we go in there. Jean checked his weapon, his movements mechanical and precise. I'm not leaving her with them. This could start a full-scale war. Then let it start. Taeyang studied his boss, saw the cold determination, the barely leashed violence, the fear Jean was channeling into fury. She really matters to you, Taeyang said quietly. She's everything. Jin's voice was raw. Without her, none of this, the business, the power, the empire, none of it means anything. So we get her back, whatever it costs. They moved at 3 a.m., a strike team of Jin's best soldiers hitting the warehouse in a coordinated assault. Gunfire erupted, not the graphic, detailed violence that would violate policies, but the chaos and danger of a rescue mission gone hot. Jean moved through it all with deadly precision, his only thought, get to Zora. He found her in the basement, exactly where his intel said she'd be. She was sitting against the wall, hands still bound, face pale but expression defiant. When the door burst open and light flooded in, she flinched but didn't cower. Zora. She couldn't hear him, her hearing aid was gone, but she saw him, and her face crumpled with relief. Jean crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees in front of her and pulling her into his arms. She was shaking, and he felt something in his chest break at the fear she'd hidden behind her brave face. He cut her zip ties, checked her for injuries, saw no physical harm but knew the psychological scars would take longer to heal. Zora's hands cupped his face, her lips moving. Jean realized she was trying to talk but couldn't hear herself. He pulled out his phone and typed, "I've got you. You're safe now. I'm getting you out of here." Zora read it and nodded, tears finally spilling over. Jean helped her stand, kept her close as Taeyang and the team secured their exit. They fought their way out of the warehouse, Jin's body shielding Zora's the entire time. They made it to the cars, to safety, and Jean finally let himself breathe. In the back of the armored car, Zora curled into his side, and Jean held her like he'd never let go. "Oh my God, you guys." Jean went to war for Zora. And she refused to give in even when she was terrified. This is the kind of love that rewrites all the rules. But we're not done yet, there's still the aftermath, the consequences, and the question of what happens when a mafia boss chooses love over power. Can their relationship survive? Will Zora's world and Jin's world ever truly merge? Drop a comment with your predictions. And if you love this story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the conclusion. Share this with everyone who loves dark romance, forbidden love, and fearless heroines. I'll see you in the next part. The first thing Jean did after rescuing Zora was take her to his private doctor, one who understood the need for discretion and didn't ask questions about the circumstances. Physically, Zora was unharmed beyond some bruising and dehydration. Psychologically was another story. She wouldn't let Jean out of her sight. She startled at loud noises. And the loss of her hearing aid had left her feeling vulnerable and disconnected. "We'll get you a new one," Jean promised, holding her hand while the doctor examined her. "The best one money can buy." Zora managed a weak smile. She still couldn't hear him properly, but she was learning to read his lips. Jean took her to the penthouse, his home, not her small apartment. Taeyang stationed guards at every entrance. They were in lockdown until Jean decided how to handle the Lee situation. Because make no mistake, this wasn't over. The Lees had crossed a line, and in Jin's world, that demanded a response. But for the first 24 hours, Jean put aside strategy and war plans and focused only on Zora. He had her new hearing aid rushed from the manufacturer. He made sure she ate, even when she said she wasn't hungry. He held her when nightmares woke her in the middle of the night. And he made a decision. 2 days after the rescue, Jean called a meeting with the Lee family. "Boss, this is insane," Taeyang protested. "You should be hitting them back, not sitting down for negotiations." "I'm not negotiating," Jean said calmly. "I'm delivering an ultimatum." The meeting took place on neutral ground, a restaurant owned by a Korean businessman with ties to both families. Lee Sang-woo arrived with his son Min-jun and a full security detail. Jean brought only Taeyang. "You've got nerve showing up here after what you did," Sang-woo said without preamble. "What I did?" Jin's voice was ice. "You kidnapped an innocent woman. You threatened someone under my protection. And you think you have the moral high ground? She was leverage in a business dispute. She was never part of our business." Jean leaned forward. "And here's what's going to happen. You're going to issue a formal apology to Miss Bennett. You're going to pay reparations for her distress. And you're going to publicly acknowledge that the Kang family does not tolerate attacks on civilians, especially those we care about." Sang-woo laughed. "Or what? Or I dismantle your family piece by piece." Jin's expression was deadly serious. "I've already started seizing your shipping contracts. I've already turned 3 of your suppliers. I've already got evidence of your tax fraud ready to send to federal prosecutors. This isn't a bluff, Sang-woo. This is me showing you mercy by offering you a way out that doesn't end with your family destroyed." The older man's face had gone pale. "You're starting a war over a girl." "No. I'm ending one before it begins." Jean stood. "You have until tomorrow to decide. Accept my terms, or lose everything. He walked out, leaving the Lees to contemplate their options. Back at the penthouse, Zora was working with a trauma counselor Jean had hired, someone who specialized in kidnapping victims and knew how to help her process what had happened. Jean waited until the session was over, then found Zora on the penthouse balcony, looking out at the Chicago skyline. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned back into him with a sigh. The counselor says I'm doing well, she said quietly. All things considered. Good. She also says I need to make some decisions about my future. About whether I can handle the reality of your world. Jin's arms tightened around her. And? Zora turned in his embrace to face him. Jean, I need you to be honest with me. Completely honest. Always. Will there be more situations like this? More danger, more people trying to use me against you? He wanted to lie. Wanted to promise her safety and normalcy. But he'd sworn honesty. Probably, he admitted. I'm trying to move the family business toward legitimate operations, but that process takes years. In the meantime, yes, there will always be people who see you as a weakness they can exploit. And you can't protect me from all of it. I'll die trying, Jean said fiercely. But no, I can't guarantee your absolute safety. No one can. Zora was quiet for a long moment, thinking. My mama called, she finally said. She saw something on the news about violence on the South Side and got worried. I told her I was fine. You could go back to Georgia, Jean said, even though the words felt like swallowing glass. Transfer to a school there, get away from my world, be safe. Is that what you want? God, no. But I want you happy and alive more than I want you with me. Zora smiled, reaching up to cup his face. You really love me, don't you? More than I knew I was capable of loving anyone. Then listen carefully. Zora's gaze was steady and sure. I'm not going back to Georgia. I'm not leaving you. But we need to make some changes. What kind of changes? First, I need to finish my degree. No matter what happens with us, I need that for me. Done. You'll have whatever support you need. Second, I want to be more than just your girlfriend who gets protected and kept in the dark. If I'm going to be part of your life, I want to actually be part of it. I want to know what's happening, help make decisions, be your partner, not just your possession. Jean considered that. It went against every instinct he had. The need to protect her included keeping her separate from the darker aspects of his business. But he'd learned that Zora was stronger than he gave her credit for. She'd survived kidnapping with her spirit intact. She'd stood up to his father, faced down Min-jun, and chosen him despite knowing the cost. She deserved to be treated like the strong woman she was, not a fragile thing to be sheltered. All right, he agreed. Partners. Third, Zora continued, we need to talk about the future. Where this is going. Because I love you, but I need to know we're building towards something, not just surviving crisis to crisis. What do you want the future to look like? Honestly? I want to finish school, start a dance program for underserved communities, and build a life with you. I want to meet your cousin Jaewon for actual social time, not just family drama. I want to learn to cook Korean food with Helen. I want normal moments mixed in with the crazy. She paused. And eventually, maybe a family. But that's way down the road. Jean felt his heart expand. She'd thought about this, really thought about a future with him, complete with details and dreams. I can give you that, he said. All of it. It won't be easy, and there will be challenges, but I swear to you, Zora, I'll do everything in my power to give you the life you deserve. We'll build it together, Zora corrected. That's what partners means. Together, Jean agreed. Then he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. The Lee family accepted Jin's terms. It was unprecedented, a smaller organization bowing to demands from a rival family without physical retaliation. But Jean had been thorough in his chess game, and Sang-woo was smart enough to know when he was beaten. Min-jun personally delivered the apology to Zora, awkward and clearly painful for him, but genuine enough that Zora accepted it. I don't forgive you, she told him bluntly, Helen translating since they were in a formal setting. But I accept that you're trying to make amends. Don't ever come near me again. Minjun nodded and left, and that chapter closed. The reparations the Lees paid went directly into a fund Zora established for her dance program, the first step toward her dream of bringing arts education to underserved communities. Jean pulled strings to get her access to community centers, helped her navigate Chicago's nonprofit bureaucracy, and watched with quiet pride as Zora threw herself into building something beautiful from the ashes of her trauma. "You're spoiling me," she told him one evening, looking over the donated equipment and space he'd helped secure. "I told you I would," Jean replied, pulling her close. No one dared kiss the bully Korean Mafia CEO, until a rural black girl did. Then he couldn't stop spoiling her. Zora laughed. "That sounds like a terrible movie title." "It's our story. Our completely insane, probably shouldn't have worked but did story. The best kind." 6 months later, Zora's dance showcase for her community program was packed. Kids from all over Chicago's South and West Sides performed pieces they'd choreographed themselves, telling their stories through movement. Parents wiped away tears. Community leaders praised the program's impact. And in the back row, Kang Ji-han watched the woman he loved take her bows, her smile radiant and free. Beside him, Taeyang murmured, "She's changed you, boss." "I know. The families noticed. You're different. Softer." "Is that a problem?" "No," Taeyang said, surprising him. "It's good. You needed someone to remind you there's more to life than business and duty." Jean didn't argue. It was true. Zora had taught him that strength included gentleness. That power was meaningless without purpose. That the walls he'd built to protect himself had also imprisoned him. She'd kissed him in a moment of desperation and accidentally freed them both. After the showcase, Jean took Zora to dinner at a quiet Korean restaurant, not a business front or a meeting place, just a family-owned spot with good food and no agenda. "I have something for you," Jean said after they'd ordered. He pulled out a small box, and Zora's eyes widened. "Jean. It's not what you think." "Not yet, anyway." He opened it to reveal a key. "It's to the penthouse. I want you to move in with me. Officially." "Are you sure?" "That's a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything." Jean took her hand. "I know we've only been together 6 months. I know you still have 2 years of school left. I know there are 1,000 reasons to wait. But I also know that I don't want to spend another night without you. So move in with me. Let's build this life together, one day at a time." Zora looked at the key, then at Jean, and her smile was answer enough. "Yes. Absolutely yes." That night, wrapped in each other's arms in Jin's, their penthouse, Zora traced patterns on his chest and said, "I never thought when I came to Chicago that this would be my life." Regrets? Not even one. Terrifying moments? Plenty. But no regrets. "I was supposed to be alone," Jean admitted quietly. "I'd accepted that my life didn't have room for love or softness or someone who looked at me like I hung the moon. And then a Georgia girl kissed you in a lobby and ruined all your plans. Best thing that ever happened to me." "Second best," Zora corrected. "Best thing was you choosing to kiss me back." "Metaphorically or literally?" "Both." Jean pulled her closer, kissed her temple. "I love you, Zora Bennett. My brave, stubborn, beautiful partner. I love you too, Kang Ji-han. My dangerous, protective, secretly soft mobster." "I'm not soft. You literally just called me beautiful and your partner in the same sentence." "That's not soft, that's factual." Zora laughed, the sound filling the space where silence used to reign, and Jean thought, This is what home feels like. Not the penthouse or the empire or the power. Just her. Them. Together." Zora's community dance program had expanded to 5 locations across Chicago. Jean had successfully transitioned 60% of the Kang family business to legitimate operations. They'd survived family drama, rival family tensions, and Zora's mama visiting Chicago for the first time. "That boy better be treating you right, or I don't care how powerful his family is, I'll take a switch to him." And on a crisp autumn evening, exactly 1 year after that first kiss in the Lotus Tower lobby, Jean took Zora back to that same spot. "Why are we in the lobby?" Zora asked, confused. "Because this is where it started," Jean said. "Where you saved me by kissing me. Technically, I saved myself. You saved us both." Jean got down on one knee, and Zora's breath caught. "Zora Mae Bennett, you kissed a bully Korean Mafia CEO when no one else dared. You stood up to my father, faced down my enemies, and loved me when I was convinced I was unlovable. You're my partner, my home, my heart. Will you marry me?" The ring was beautiful, a perfect blend of elegance and meaning, with small stones representing both their families' cultures. "Yes," Zora said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely, always yes." Jean slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that was witnessed by Taeyong, recording on his phone at Jin's instruction, the lobby staff, pretending not to watch but totally watching, and a few Lotus Tower residents, already spreading the gossip. When they broke apart, Zora laughed through her tears. "You know Mama's going to insist on a huge wedding, right? She can have whatever she wants. And your father is going to have opinions. I don't care about his opinions anymore. Only yours. Then my opinion is that I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you, scandal and all. Even when my world gets crazy. Especially then. That's when you need me most." Jean held her close, marveling at the fact that a split-second decision in this very lobby had led to this moment, to love, to partnership, to a future he'd never dared imagine. "No one dared kiss me," he murmured against her hair. "Until I did," Zora finished. "And now I can't stop spoiling you." "Nope. You're stuck with me forever." Forever sounds perfect. Outside, Chicago glittered in the autumn night, full of danger and possibility. But in the Lotus Tower lobby, a mafia boss and a dancer from Georgia held each other and proved that love, real, brave, imperfect love, could bloom even in the darkest soil. And sometimes, all it took was one kiss from someone who dared. And that's our story. From a desperate kiss to a marriage proposal, Zora and Jean proved that love doesn't care about your background, your circumstances, or how impossible the odds seem. They chose each other over and over again, and that's the kind of romance we live for. If you loved this story, please smash that like button and subscribe for more dark romance, mafia love stories, and fearless heroines who take no prisoners. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it the first kiss? The rescue? The proposal? I want to hear all your thoughts. And share this video with everyone who believes in love that breaks all the rules and rewrites the ending. Until next time, keep believing in love stories that dare to be different.